Mhm. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, 12:01. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Aparo's Nonprofit Bites and Insights. Today's webinar is the first of a three-part series around donor cultivation and stewardship. We are recording this webinar, and the link will be shared with you after the webinar. So while I do a quick introduction and allow people to trickle in, please give your chat box a test run. Drop a hi, let us know what organization you're with. If you happen not to be in Charlotte, let us know where you're joining us from. Give that a try. While you're doing that, my name is Yen Ting. I am Program Associate with Aparo. For those of you who are new to Aparo, Aparo is a nonprofit that provides services to other nonprofits to help meet their technology and business process needs. And we do that in a number of ways. We do one-on-one support. We have team trainings. We provide support on technology plans, on application selections, all of this just to name a few of those services. I invite you to look on our website if you haven't already, aparo.org, APPARO, to get more information, and I'll drop that in the chat as well. So today we have Daryl Moser from Donor Perfect. Donor Perfect is a donor management software. If you joined us in our February webinar around mobile apps, yes, it's the same speaker. He is a man of many talents and wears multiple hats and has been graciously sharing his time with us. This time, however, to give us tips and strategies when it comes to prospecting and cultivating new donors, as well as ways to maintain the relationships with your current donors so that they'll want to donate again. We will have a Q&A at the end, but please, I see you guys are using the chat box. Please continue to use the chat box, drop in your questions. There is also a Q&A box. You can use that as well, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And that's it for me. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Daryl.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yenting. And I really appreciate Aparo for the kind of content that they're delivering to the nonprofits. I think this is great. My only wish is I was a little bit closer to the North Carolina area so that I could actually get to know all of you a little bit more. But I'm really excited to be presenting this today. Part of what Donor Perfect is actually doing as we get ready for our own conference this year is we're going to be focusing a lot on donor acquisition as well as stories and building the stories for your nonprofit. So we're going to touch on a little bit of that inside of this webinar. Just to give you a little bit of background on me. I'm currently the business development manager at Donor Perfect, and what that allows me to do is I get to go find all the really cool products that we can connect to Donor Perfect to help expand the capabilities that you have by putting things together. Historically, I was a software developer. I used to write code, and it was really exciting for me to be able to write code that people would then use to help improve their lives. So I ended up transitioning and became a technology consultant, but over the years, I spent 25 years writing integrations to Razor's Edge. We did that because we were a ticketing solution, and many of our clients were zoos and museums. So we actually had to flow some of the membership data into the Razor's Edge system that they were using. But as I was there, I kept wondering, are there other options that are out there that nonprofits could also use to try and keep track of their donations? And so I ended up joining up with Donor Perfect, and that's where I became their partner solutions person. As Yenting mentioned, I'm also a CEO of Milk Crate that actually makes nonprofit mobile apps. And I've been a part of a nonprofit myself. It's a human services agency here in Berks County of Pennsylvania for about 10 years now. I'm a husband, father of 4, and I love cycling. So if anybody wants to reach out for some great rides, that'd be something that'd be great to go ahead and do. But to move on, I'm going to start this with something that you've probably heard before, is the donor journey. And from a donor perfect perspective, the donor journey, you can have a number of different bullet points, but they are very similar in terms of, how do you end up acquiring that first donor? And one of the things that you have to give them is the exposure. And I think we all know this. I think all of the nonprofits that are probably here are using websites and Facebook. You're using word of mouth and so forth to try and create some exposure in the community to make them aware of the mission that you're serving. But then how do you get that person who's not technically a donor to make their first engagement? And notice I didn't say gift, but I said engagement, because there are a variety of ways that people can engage with your organization that doesn't just depend on money. Now, I realize that most of you that are attending are probably from a development department, so money is the key part. But with Donor Perfect and some of the side products that we end up looking at, we find that volunteering and so forth is just another way that people can participate inside of your organization. And that engagement leads them to the path of actually being a donor in the future. We're then going to talk a little bit about engagement growth, and we're going to use a tried and true discussion, which is recency, frequency, and monetary, to assess whether or not your donors are ready to increase their gift and how you might be able to go about that. Once your donor has become a regular giver, they may end up becoming an advocate. And notice I don't put a timeline on any of this. You can have somebody that zooms from exposure to advocate in the course of weeks or months. They just hear about your cause and they're so passionate about it, and they're out there telling everybody about it. And then ultimately, you've got to put them into sort of this maintenance mode of whatever level that they're at. You want to keep them at that level and continue to move them up to the next one. This list of journey items is really a bit of a circle, because the advocate, the growth and retention, ends up feeding the exposure. So when we talk about this, as I mentioned, word of mouth, social media, physical signage, how do you get the word out about your nonprofit in the community? You can even go to a variety of events, set up a table, make sure you've got a banner, just so that you're getting some exposure. People are seeing you, knowing you. In the human services agency that I'm a part of, we have a dual role of exposure. One is we need to be able to get the donors and the volunteers to be aware of us, because we have close to 500 volunteers that are key to our organization. However, we also need to make sure that the community knows that we have these services available. So human services, case management, being able to help people through difficult times, that clientele needs to be able to find us. So the more exposure we give, the more of those three different aspects that we're able to make sure that we're able to serve. In getting them engaged, great. So they heard about you, but what would they do if they could possibly participate, if they had the heart for your mission? How do you measure their engagement? Likes in social media is one way, and it's kind of interesting. So there's this dilemma that is happening inside of the nonprofits right now, where you can see thousands of people end up following you. You start making posts, and sometimes you get about 10 likes, and it's like very disappointing. And what I think we're seeing, though, is that social media is getting a little bit clogged at this point, but it's still a very necessary platform to make sure that you're putting yourself out there. The other thing that you can do is try and hold events that people can get engaged, whether they're fundraising events or whether they're just community events that you're trying to communicate what you're doing inside of that event. You can give your constituents, and I'll use this term a lot, that's what we call them in Donor Perfect, because it's not just a donor, a form or a survey. And we're going to talk a lot about this, because one of the things that I think is really key to increasing your fundraising is getting to know who your donors are and what they're about. So forms and surveys and tools that you can get exposed to them. Of course, in this time of pandemic, it's difficult to have some face-to-face meetings, but if you can actually set up face-to-face opportunities with your donors, you're going to get to learn more about them. And when you understand why they give, that's going to help inform the communication that you put out there in the future. We talked about volunteers, and of course, they can donate as a measure of engagement. Now, inside of Donor Perfect, we have what's basically called a contact tracker. So anytime that you've engaged with a donor, whether they've received an email, opened an email, clicked on the donation form, whether they've actually volunteered at an event, that is all data that gets recorded inside of the donor record. So you as a development officer have a very vivid picture of what their participation level is inside of your nonprofit. So in the donor journey, how do you stimulate growth? Okay, we talked about measuring engagement, gifts made, that RFM model, recency, frequency. So recency, how long has it been since they've made a gift? Honestly, I was lapsing inside of my own nonprofit. I was sort of chuckling about it, but I realized that I'd gone into the Donor Perfect instance that we use for the Human Services Agency. And on my donor record, it actually said that I had lapsed because it had been a year since I'd made my last gift. So little reminders like that are ways to make sure that you're actually able to stay on top of what you're doing from a fundraising perspective. So that's the recency aspect of it, as well as the frequency. How often have I given over the last number of years? Am I maintaining a certain level, or am I actually stepping up my monetary gift that I'm doing inside of the nonprofit? These are perspectives that you want to take with any of your donors to make sure that you're nurturing and moving them, through the organization. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the key as to how you're going to stimulate them to change that, because just sending out an annual fund is maybe not the way that they're going to move up the ladder. We talked about emails open, volunteering, and then enticing the engagement. What more can you do to get them more active in your organization? And then once they become an advocate, they should be the ones that are out there talking in your community, telling them about your mission, encouraging the volunteering, and maybe even giving major gifts, right? Stepping up their volunteer hours. We have a number of people that are on our board that probably spend 20 to 30 hours at the nonprofit per week, just because they're passionate about it and they're serving in so many different ways. And so you want to try and move people up to the level that they can be your advocate. Now, as much as there is a donor journey, there is also your organization's fundraising journey. And I wanted to talk about this because some of the questions that were starting to come in early on were about organizations that maybe did not actually start doing individual fundraising. And the year that I started at the nonprofit where I served, traditionally we had gotten most of our funding from government grants. We have Meals on Wheels, we have senior citizen, congregate meals, and so forth. And all of that was being funded by the state of Pennsylvania for the majority. There still were some individual donors, but we never had a development person. We didn't cultivate those gifts. However, in that year, the government of the state of Pennsylvania was delaying funding to the nonprofits. And our board said that we needed to develop some independence from that. So we actually began our journey of individual fundraising. It was about 10 to 9 years ago. And so I think that could possibly be similar for some of the organizations that I see, but at Donor Perfect, I can look at a swath of about 9,000 nonprofits, as well as my work at Milk Crate, and some of them are very early entry startups, and they're beginning to do the fundraising. And so how do you begin? How do you kick that off? Well, your organization journey, somebody had an idea and a mission. There was probably sweat investment. People ended up contributing their time. They were working on it. They were all trying to meet whatever the cause was that you were trying to address with your mission. And the only way that they could figure out how to do it was maybe through that volunteering or putting the time into it. Early funding, passing the hat, asking people, point blank, hey, could you help us support? This is what we're trying to do. And it doesn't matter which sector of the industry that you're in, you got to have a cause that will resonate with people. Government funding, foundation grants, corporate funding, these are all places that you can go look. We'll talk a little bit about grants in this presentation. And then individual donors. How do you begin to build that list? We end up talking to clients that are right on the verge of losing control of how much data they have about their individuals. Usually it's tracked in spreadsheets. And once they get to be about 500 lines on the spreadsheet and you're trying to keep track of gift history, that's the point in time that the nonprofit ends up looking for a CRM or some sort of database to manage the information that they're collecting about the donors. So this is just a part of your organization's journey of fundraising. And then after that, you begin to identify different ways that you can create fundraising opportunities. At our nonprofit, we do a couple of raffles per year. We hold some health events and so forth, 5K runs. We promote monthly giving. Actually, promote's probably a bit of a strong word. We could definitely do a better job of that. And then, of course, there's peer-to-peer fundraising, whether those are events or if it's just something that you're doing from a crowdfunding perspective. There are different ways that you can get your individuals to nudge others to give to your cause as well. So chart out where you are in terms of your fundraising journey. If you are a very mature nonprofit and you've been getting individual gifts that are out there, you're probably at the end of this, and you're creating individual donor programs all the time. If you're just starting out and maybe you only had that one funding source for a period of time, there are definitely ideas that we're going to talk about to grow that. So the key thing, and this is a takeaway that I've got from our conference that we're building up right now, is know your donors. How do you get to know them? You can interview them. The key question that you really want to ask them is why do they give? What is their attachment to your organization? For me, I was a part of a business that had heard about a Christmas time program where they were looking for sponsors basically to get Christmas gifts for children in the community that didn't have the wherewithal, were likely not to receive something. We brought that into our company, and we started to see that all of our employees were very interested in giving. That was the attachment point that I had to this nonprofit. And I was a donor for a number of years before I became a board member. I think every donor actually has a story. They really do. I mean, maybe they were in that situation. There's things such as grateful patient programs that are out there, people that have gone to hospitals and end up being donors to those hospitals because their experience there was so fantastic. Maybe you're a humane society and there was a soft spot for pets that were out there, and they really wanted to help them because maybe they actually had a rescue that was very close to their heart. There are so many different reasons that your donors have for why they're giving, but guess what? If you can capture those stories end up being motivation for the next donor that was in that exact same place. So the key there is get these stories, start collecting them. Your staff, by the same token, they're choosing to work for your nonprofit. We all know that oftentimes nonprofits struggle. They're not able to compete in the marketplace, the salaries that they pay and so forth. It's very difficult to be competitive, but the people that work inside of your nonprofit likely have a mission-oriented motivation as well. They've got a story behind them as to why they want to work for your organization. So go ahead and collect those stories as well. Volunteers, same thing. They've got a story. As well as your clients. Remember, I talked about the Grateful Patient program. Some programs, you can definitely collect stories from the clients. Some, they prefer to remain anonymous. Meals on Wheels programs that are out there, there's lots of great stories that we've seen from our clients at the nonprofit where I serve. So how do you collect them? Interviews, pick up the phone, give them a call. Collect those stories. Make sure that they're okay with you sharing that. Even if you anonymize it, even if it's donor A, donor B, however you decide to keep it somewhat isolated, the story is what's really impressive about it. They will also help you to identify traits of your donors. And this is what I mean by do you know who your donors are really made up of. In a for-profit business, and let's say Donor Perfect, we try to identify the persona of our buyer. Who is the traditional buyer that is actually making the decision to purchase CRM software? Same kind of question you should ask yourself. Who is the typical donor that might be giving to your organization? There could be different ways that you might end up communicating with them if you realize that maybe a large portion of millennials are actually donors inside of your organization. They could be micro givers and so forth, and the way that you might communicate with them could be different. If those traits do exist, then inside of the CRM or whatever tool that you're using at this point, we're going to talk a lot about segmentation, because the message that you send to the people, if it resonates with them, I think they're going to be more likely to give, and we're going to see some more performance in terms of your fundraising capability. So one product, and remember, my job at Donor Perfect is actually to go find the really cool stuff that's out there that is new and cutting edge. So one of the new products that I've heard about is a tool called Kind Catch. It's a mobile app that lives on your phone. You let your donors know about it. You let your volunteers, even people that are in your program, they can quickly record a video of the reason, maybe while they're out there volunteering. Imagine I'm a Meals on Wheels driver, and I'm sitting in my car and I'm going to record a video right now because I'm going to go visit Anne, who is one of our clients that are out there. That video gets captured, uploaded to their website. You can then push that out via social media or text messages, and share that with your whole community, because you're going to end up motivating others through that volunteer effort, through that donor effort, and so forth. So this is just a software package that is a really easy way to start collecting those stories. And you're going to hear, I mean, videos is where it's at in this day and age. I know we can talk about direct mail. I've got a little piece talking about that, but people are motivated by seeing humans, and humans that are in motion that look like they're alive, and that's where videos come into play. So segmentation, save the embarrassment. Why do you want to segment? Here are some reasons. This came right from the Donor Perfect website on segmentation. What if you send an invitation to a gala that the donor is like in California? I mean, are they really going to be able to make your North Carolina gala? I mean, they may still be a donor, but it's a little bit embarrassing. An email to a donor who isn't likely to give again because they gave to a special campaign 15 years ago, right? There's a different way that you might want to message that donor. We call them lapsed, right? So how would you communicate with somebody who's lapsed? Hey, it's been a long time since we've heard from you. We really could use your support. That's a message that's very specific, but you probably got more than one of those in your database. So using segmentation, you can end up tailoring the communication that you send out to them. Or a solicitation email received by staff or volunteer. They're getting the same message as your donors. You're not thanking the volunteer for their participation because you're just saying, give me money. Well, you could do a much better job of that if you were actually saying, we appreciate all the other ways that you serve here. And if you feel the need, go ahead and give a gift, and here's the link. So recognizing staff and volunteers, or an email asking for a monthly donation of somebody that's already enrolled in it. So save yourself the embarrassment, use segmentation, and make sure that you're empowering your communication that's going out there and driving your campaign so that you can selectively segment. This is actually a screenshot inside of the Donor Perfect system, so you can set an associated filter for the message that you're going to be sending out. So I can just communicate with my volunteers in this example. I could have a filter that's set up for a one-time gift. You get the idea. The other thing about segmentation, and I don't know if in the chat everybody wants to vote for which one they think is actually the cutest picture that's in here right now, but if you're a humane society and you've got a dog lover that's out there, but you keep sending them emails with pictures of cats, I don't know, that might not actually resonate. And hopefully my dogs don't end up barking and protesting right now. But anyway, you kind of get the idea. For my nonprofit, we've actually got a number of different programs. I think I shared the idea of how I got started. The Families in Need during Christmas time was one of the programs that was really attached to my heart. We've got 6 or 7 different programs that are out there. The senior citizen congregate meals and so forth versus the Meals on Wheels program. Maybe one of those programs resonates with me more. If you know what my donor story is, you're going to be able to communicate with me about the things that matter to me and less about the things that maybe are not in my wheelhouse. So segmentation can really help you both on a graphical as well as a content area. All right, I was just checking our chat here. All right, no votes for the kitten or the puppy. All right, well, we can bring that up later. The next area of segmentation. All right, so now we're going to get into an area that I found fascinating to study. And as a programmer, it doesn't really make sense, but psychology, right? So which image actually motivates you more, right? And so I've been spending a lot of time working on nonprofit outcome data with Donor Perfect, as well as the mobile app organization that I'm with, because we're trying to poll and survey people that are in the program to figure out what kind of data can we retrieve that we can share with our donors to tell them how successful we are. What we found is that people tend to be very emotional or statistical. They can be both. And one thing that I want to be clear of, I'm not necessarily advocating that you segment your communication to say, oh, this person is definitely this way, and so I'm just going to send them pictures that are really emotional and motivational, or this one's totally statistical because he was a programmer and I know that he just wants to see the numbers. This case, I'm not going to push the segmentation idea. I'm just going to ask you to try and balance your communication. Recognize that donors come in many different varieties, and you can't necessarily dissect their personality based on their giving history. I talked to an organization this week that actually built some artificial intelligence engines to try and analyze that. They were not able to pull enough data to be able to interpret. However, if any of you have been in HR departments or have taken any of the Myers-Briggs tests, there's something called a DISC profile. And a few years ago, there was a presentation at the AHP conference where somebody had brought DISC profiles as a way to analyze major gift fundraising. And I think that is a very valid way to perhaps use DISC profiles. Once you get to know somebody and you understand maybe their personality traits, you know what to come to the table with when you're going to ask them for a donation. It might be the story, or it might actually be the statistics. But DISC falls into these 4 different category areas. I tried to put, after, you can look at the details online, but after each one of those areas, which one is more likely to respond to data and which one is more likely to respond to an emotional story. So your dominance and your conscientiousness tend to be more data oriented. Your influence and your steadiness tend to be more story oriented. They want the emotional attachment that they've got. Conscientiousness, honestly, if you read it, it looks just like a programmer. They want the analytics on it. And that's really what they're motivated by. I also have the link here in the slides, so we'll be sharing this out later so that you can go ahead and read the DISC personality coming from Indeed.com. So finding new donors, right? So we've collected all these donor stories. We put the word out. Now, how do we actually get them to give? Or how can I actually find more people, right? So more people was kind of the key. Physical presence, speaking, going out to community, faith-based organizations, the fairs, we spoke about that. Calling them into action. Make sure that you've got a way that they can act, okay? If you're going to be out there and you're speaking, don't just tell the mission and the story, but give them and if you go visit our website, you can donate, or you visit our website, there's a volunteer option, or meet me out at the table after this discussion, and I'll be able to hand you a volunteer or a donate form, that kind of thing. Make sure that you've got a very tangible call to action when you're doing the physical presence. Digital presence, same thing. Social media, search engine optimization. Are you using words that actually will allow your organization to be found on your website over and over again? In for-profit businesses, we know this a lot. We've got blog posts that are out there that repeat the words that are actually going to be meaningful to help people find us. You need to do the same thing for your nonprofit as well, so that the search engines will actually find you, whether it's a person that wants to volunteer or donate, or whether it's a person that actually needs your services. And just like the physical presence, once they've found you on your website, you really need to make sure that the key things that you want them to do are easy and accessible. That donate button should be standing out. It should be right at the top of your page, no scrolling to find it. Same thing with the volunteer button. Make sure that that is front and center of any kind of person that finds your nonprofit in a digital area. Another way that you can find new donors is events. Now, I'm going to do some statistical analysis on fundraising for events. I've been a part of that organization for years, and we were so excited about the raffles that we ended up holding. We get $15,000 to $20,000 worth of income that comes as a result of those events. And then I ended up speaking to some people in the industry that said events are really about donor acquisition. Well, the embarrassing thing that I have to share is, through all of those raffles, we didn't collect email addresses, phone numbers, addresses for direct mail. All of the people that ended up attending, we were just happy to see them, invest a little bit to go ahead and win the basket or whatever that they were raffling off. The real power of the event was in collecting the names and addresses. It is a donor acquisition event, usually first and foremost. So keep that in mind, whether it's a raffle. Now, a gala is definitely a special kind of event. That's probably people that you may be cultivating for a major gift in the future. They've been major donors that have been out there. They're the ones that are going to be able to afford the high dollars per plate type of gala that's out there. Auctions, golf tournaments, 5Ks, concerts, ideas. So many different ideas that are out there just to have an event. But remember, be collecting the people, the data, the contact information so that you can cultivate them as donors in the future. The other way that I wanted to mention, and some of you may already be using marketing agencies, and agencies can actually bring you prepared lists. You can get lists of 100,000 people that are likely to donate to your cause. This is a very common thing that they do inside of the homeless missions, as well as food pantries and food banks. Have marketing agencies that are out there. I was just going to let you all be aware of something that's available from Donor Search, which is one of our partner companies at Donor Perfect, is they offer marketing lists where there's 160 million households in their database, and you can apply up to 250 different filters to go ahead and retrieve a set of names. These names end up coming with a full mailing address. They do not include email. I could probably do a whole other webinar about email and text opt-ins. So don't go cold emailing people. People get really, or the email companies get really upset about that. But direct mail is definitely a target area. So if you're looking for a source of names, and it's interesting, we talked a little bit about cycling. My son was actually a part of a team in South Carolina. I ended up using the marketing list feature to find people that were into physical fitness and in the South Carolina area, and I could identify, I think it was maybe a couple hundred people that could be candidates if I chose to go do a direct mail piece to try and bring them into our organization to support the nonprofit that he was racing for at the time. So digital marketing lists, definitely check that one out. This next one is about a new product that we're going to be announcing, and this will be the first, anybody here at the webinar, this is the first time that anybody will get a chance to see this little video about this really cool product. So I'm happy to share this with you. So it's called DP Social Campaigns, and it's a way to try and create a little bit of a viral component for your nonprofit to get people to enroll. So let me just see if we can get this started.
DP Social Campaign gives you the power to build, launch, and manage organic social media campaigns. Measure their impact on your organization and get new donor emails. Your social photo campaign is designed to live and grow in social media, where anyone can click to join without downloading an app or creating an account. Supporters click to add their photo to a frame that communicates your mission and brand. You can offer multiple frames if you like. They can accept a suggested caption or change it to make the message their own. Next, they're asked to share their framed photo and message with their friends on any social network. Many participants leave their name and email, so you can re-engage on your own terms. Every framed photo and social post helps your campaign reach larger audiences. Because these messages come from a friend, more people will see and trust them and join in. Behind the scenes, you collect up to 40 data points. Your analytics dashboard gives you a complete view of performance, so you can see how your campaign and your community are driving engagement. And all that data gets synced to your Donor Perfect CRM. DP Social Campaign is a social donor acquisition tool that helps you qualify leads, cultivate donors, and measure ROI based on your social engagement. Building and launching your own social media campaign is easy. Start by picking a template and drop in your images and copy to create a fully branded campaign without any coding. When you're finished, use all your communication channels, email, social media, SMS, and your website to get the message out. As your campaign grows, your gallery shows you who participates. You can curate the photos participants see by highlighting favorite content and hiding or deleting undesirable entries. The user-generated content shared in your social campaign comes with a license for your marketing use. There are many use cases. Social campaigns to support your awareness day or month, photo petitions for your accountability work, cause marketing campaigns with or without a sponsor, and social activations that expand the footprint of your events. Get more from social with DP Social Campaign.
So we've been working with the charity folks on creating this integrated solution as an add-on to the Donor Perfect product. One of the things, and the idea that you can create a social campaign where you create a frame around your picture so that I can say, I am a part of, helping to feed those in need in Berks County. And I can post that on my social, and I put the button there that says, wouldn't you also like to be able to support this? Go ahead and click this button and get a picture frame for yourself. Remember in the days when Facebook did the purple dye on your picture to support cancer? I still see a few people that have the French flag that is out there from a few years ago. This is the same kind of thing. You can actually adjust your social pictures to identify the cause that you support and to encourage your friends to do the same. So we're very excited about this as being an option for donor acquisition to get new names into your database so that you can then begin to cultivate them from a fundraising perspective. The next piece I just wanted to let everybody know about, and again, it's so much fun for me to go ahead and find these products that are out there. There is some very charitable soul who decided to make a product called grantmakers.io. It is a free resource. If you go to that link, you can use this product to go ahead and find all of the electronically filed grants that went from typically foundations to nonprofits that are out there. I was just helping an Atlanta-based nonprofit the other day to find alternate sources to their current grants and funders. And they use Grantmakers to search out grants that are coming up in the Atlanta area, B, people that were actually helping out youth and social causes in those areas. And we ended up giving them a good list of about 10 grants that they were not aware of them before. So grants is a completely different discussion, but I didn't want to leave this out of the presentation because if you're looking for new funding sources, I would definitely go take a peek inside of grantmakers.io. The other thing about Donor Perfect, and I'll touch on some of the stats over the last couple of years from the Giving Institute. We're a member of the Giving Institute that collects data about giving trends. And during this pandemic period, we actually saw foundations granting more money than they ever had previously, perhaps to fill that gap from a pandemic perspective, as well as for many of the social causes that they were trying to support. So if you've not accelerated your grant program, go ahead and take a look at grantmakers.io. It's an easy way to get access to that info. All right.
Before you move on, sorry to interrupt, but real quick on the DP campaign, social campaign. So we had a question about the photos. So the photos that come up on the Donor Perfect, are we able to use them in other places as well for other marketing and advocacy purposes?
Great question. Great question. Yes, you are. Part of the release when somebody uploads their photo to your cause is to allow you to go ahead and use that, curate the photos that you want, and incorporate it into some of your additional social posts that you have out there. So you do get the rights through the individual's approval to go ahead and do that. Great question. The first gift. All right. So getting the first gift. All right, I'm going to actually tie this back to a fundraiser that we did at the nonprofit where I support. And I want to talk about it in the sense of campaigns. So for years, we always did the annual fund, right? The annual fund, we go direct mail, we might send some emails out and so forth. We might talk a little bit about our cause. We hope they've been paying attention to the social feeds that we've been putting out there. But when the pandemic hit, it gave us an opportunity to actually say, hey, wait a minute, our food costs have tripled. We had a demand on the nonprofit organization that was significant. We challenged the leadership of the nonprofit to figure out what the actual shortfall was going to be in terms of our need. And this created the we'll call it a gap campaign, if you will, but identifying a very specific need, a very specific timing, and we need you to give now. The power of that kind of campaign is very, very significant. This exceeded anything that we ever got from an individual donor pool in prior years. I understand that the pandemic was definitely a special case that's out there, but there are some attributes that I would definitely take away from this. So timing, donate now, cause identified. We've got a shortfall in terms of funding to be able to feed people in our community. A goal identified, we needed to raise $276,000. And we made it easy. When we communicated to any of our prospective donors that were out there, We had the button right there that they could give an electronic gift. We gave them the address as to where they could send their check. It didn't need to have a whole lot of detail inside of it. We just needed to present the case. In that 2-month virtual campaign, we ended up getting 818 new donors and a 400% increase in the funds that we raised in April. So try to take away some of these aspects as to how to get that first gift. If you've already done a good job collecting stories about what you do, then think about how you're going to formulate that into a campaign, and let it be a campaign that is specific more than it is the annual fund. Don't take away your annual fund, but let this other campaign stand on its own. So the suggested asks, right? So I don't know how many of you are doing that today, whether you've got an online giving page where you've got a few buttons that make it easy to go ahead and pick $10, $25, or $50, whatever that might be. But there is a science to suggested asks that are out there. Using the segmentation that you have, you can actually, whether you're going to send it out via direct mail to say, you know, we'd really love you to give X. You're not going to put buttons on the letter. They don't work too well. But if you're also sending them to a landing page where they can make a donation, you can have multiple landing pages, multiple fundraising pages with different ranges based on their giving history, right? You know, one of the challenges when we get into major gift fundraising is people get upset when the organization does not ask for enough. Well, you know, instead of asking me for $100, I would have gladly given you 5,000 if you had only, you know, respected my capacity. And we hear some of those stories come out. So being able to segment and send people to an online giving page that would actually give them amounts that are in their range will help you to increase your fundraising. If you've got existing donors that are out there, one of the common ideas is to actually pitch them with the middle value that is 20 to 30% higher than the last gift they gave. Okay. Now, you don't want to use online giving to try and suggest that somebody donates $10,000. It's not going to stop them if they want to, but that's a different capacity, right? You might even, you can solicit your major donors if you want on these suggested ask pages, but I would encourage you to deal with them separately. This is really for what I would call your entry and your mid-tier donors. Develop them up to whatever you feel the threshold is for your major gift. We'll talk a little bit about major gifts in a couple of slides. The Giving USA report. This is 2020 data. The 2021 data is not out yet. Nonprofits grew one-time donors by 21% in 2020. More people are coming out to give. Hopefully all of you that are a part of this webinar have some sort of tool that you're able to identify who those new donors are. Treat them special, treat them well, try and give them the content and motivation to continue giving your organization. Online giving grew by 32%. I mean, that's significant, no great surprise. People were sitting at home, they were on the internet, they're on their computer, they're going to click your giving page. That's a significant growth area. In spite of that growth and how much it grew within that category, it is still a relatively small percentage of overall giving. I think it was somewhere around 15% of all gifts were made online. So why does that happen? Well, keep in mind that you've got a few people that are out there, including you know, the billionaires of the world that are actually writing significant checks. They're not doing online processing. That tends to sway a lot of the fundraising that occurs any of the major gift fundraising that's out there. Text messaging. 5 years ago, we introduced a product in the Donor Perfect platform called DP Text. It has gotten to the point where it is now a ubiquitous form of communicating. Text message lists grew by 26% in 2020. Text messages got a 6.3% click-through versus 1.7% for email. I think we know that it's a more personal form of communication. If you get the people to opt in through the texting, you're identifying another one of those engagement factors. This person's a texter, not an emailer. They may be more closely attached to your organization. I don't tend to give out, you know, my SMS capability to people that I don't maybe have that respect for. My nonprofit, sure, if they want to, you know, respectfully communicate that way, I'm good with that. Mobile devices were also up to 50% of the traffic to the nonprofit websites. So if you don't have a mobile ready website today, please make that a priority for the coming year. And online giving in human services, remember that's sort of the organization that I've been a part of to try and keep people fed and keep them housed, was up by 45%. These are just some raw data numbers, incorporate them, think about them in terms of the programs that you want to be offering, make sure that you're riding the wave of these trends. How do we keep them giving? Thank your donors. All right, there is an old adage. I mean, I can find things that go back a couple of decades that says thank your donors 7 times. Now, does that mean that you send them 7 letters? No. You're trying to find 7 different ways to reach out to them. And it doesn't even have to be very immediate. It can be over the course of the year. But if you've got somebody that's given you a gift, make sure that they're getting recognized from an individual perspective, using their name, whether it's a handwritten note. The reasons that donors don't give a second time, they didn't feel thanked. There are some interesting statistics that I see inside of the Donor Perfect realm, and there are still some clients that are out there that we're not seeing them use some of the very easy thank you features that are inside of Donor Perfect, and they're leaving money on the table because they're not going to get that second gift that's out there. So we try to nudge them along. They also didn't understand how their gift was used. This is a part of your story. This is a part of your messaging. If it's a major gift, it can be a very specific communication. I also realize that in our nonprofit, we do not like restricted funding. If somebody says, I'm going to give a gift, but I'm only going to give it to the senior center, I want it to be used only for the senior center. Bummer. Like we can't do, we can't use it for the good of the overall organization, but don't shun those gifts, because if somebody's attached to that cause and they know that it's going to be used in a specific area, they're going to be more likely to give if they know that they're contributing to something that their heart attaches to. So the thank yous, letters, email, a thank you video. I'm going to talk a little bit about that next. You can still do the handwritten cards. The tax receipt is another reach out. You're acknowledging them for their gift. You're showing them that you know what they've given over the course of the year. Get your board members to make phone calls or give them an exclusive invitation to perhaps one of your events that is coming up that is specifically geared for donors, or maybe people that are really attached to one of the segments of your nonprofit. So the thank you video, last year, we ended up releasing an integrated feature. So while I'm sitting inside of my Donor Perfect system, I've actually got a button. I'm on Daryl Moser's donor record, and I can say, send him a video. I haven't heard from Daryl in a little while. And as soon as I push that button, it launches me into another browser window where on the left in step number 1, you can actually see who I'm going to send it to. I type in a little bit of a subject, I put a message in there, and then I hit record. And I record myself saying, gosh, Yanting, thank you so much for inviting me to the Aparo webinar. I really appreciate it. It's been a meaningful part of what we're doing at Donor Perfect to be able to share it with your community. Stop. I hit send. It says, great work. Your email's on its way. Step number 3 here, that's what it looks like inside of my inbox. So I've actually got a little bit of a GIF that shows some motion in there. It's got my message on it. I click the play button and I get my personalized video. Now, if we thought handwritten notes were the way to do it in the past, this is an incredibly personal, face-to-face, pandemic-ready type of communication going back to your donors to make sure that you're thanking them. We did run this from our executive director at the nonprofit, and it was very successful. We could actually track the number of times that people forwarded the email to their other friends, family, donors to the organization because it was so cool. So keep this in mind. It's a new technology feature that's out there right at your fingertips from inside of the donor record. The other thing, guess what? This slide is a repeat. Why is it a repeat? Because you have to keep telling your story to retain your donors. Remember, the reason why donors stop giving is sometimes they don't know where their money got used. Your story is how you're telling them about how you're trying to address the cause that you're after. So whether you're telling them stories or whether you're giving them statistics of how your nonprofit actually performed, that's incredibly useful information. Keep doing it, and keep doing it at a cadence that makes sense, right? How often do your donors really want to hear from you? So many people do a monthly newsletter. That's great. You know what? Our attention spans are really getting shorter right now. If you followed any of the Donor Perfect webinars, you know that we get Constant Contact to come in and speak quite a bit about putting the content into the email that is going to get read. Keeping it short, to the point, fresh is going to be more important than a booklet that they've got to sit down and read. I'm not saying take away your newsletter, just give it a little bit more of a frequent cadence and a shorter read so that more people can absorb it. Quick touch point on fundraising ROI. I'd seen some of the early questions to this. How much should the dollars raised to the cost of the fundraising effort? What's that ratio? What's ideal? It depends, right? As all questions do. However, the key thing, donor acquisition, if you're dealing with new people that have not had a history of giving your organization, running an event that is break even is okay. Meaning for the dollar that you make, you spend $1 and you've got a new donor as a result of it. I didn't do a slide on lifetime value, but once you've got a donor who actually has the capacity and the willingness to give, even if it was one gift, their lifetime value is going to increase. So you will get that back in the future. If you're addressing an existing donor base, you want to see that the higher that you can get it above the 1-to-1 ratio, which is basically a break even, is an improvement. 2-to-1 is great. You know, here is an event. This is some statistics from those raffles that I was talking to you about, ballparking the number of hours that our team spends on it, our volunteer time that was out there, and using a rough dollar figure. Do your volunteer hours count? Yes, they do. If you were running a business and you were actually paying somebody to do this, you would say my opportunity lost is the time that I could have spent on something else that would have been more worthwhile. We ask ourselves this in the nonprofit. Should we continue with the raffles, or should we actually have the same volunteers, instead of spending their time on that, spend it on another campaign that could be more digital, that could be out in the community in a different way, shape, or form? Are we going to get a better return on that? So always be questioning, you know, what your net is and whether or not the volunteer time that you're using could be spent more effectively somewhere else. So the ROI factor for this one, we ended up getting 30,000 one year in terms of the raffle. Cost us about 12.8 in terms of overall time, as well as expenses for food and rentals and so forth. And so it was a ratio of 2.3. If you were to talk about major gift programs, if you mature your major gift program, you should be seeing something like a 10-to-1. Just to give you some perspective here, this is why major gifts are like where it's really at once your organization is ready for that. In the case of direct mail, if I was about to send out 3,000 letters, depending on the print piece that I'm going to be getting done, postage and so forth, I might end up spending $4,500. I've got labor that I'm going to include in that at $1,200. Couple of reminders here, make sure you're getting nonprofit postage rates. It can be as much as 13 cents versus 58 cents per letter. Make sure that you get your list CAS and NCOA certified. This makes sure that your addresses have been cleansed and that people that have moved have been updated inside of your system. Donor Perfect has a tool that actually comes in nightly and double checks all the addresses of your donors and updates them based on records of moving within the postal system, so that you're not sending them to an old address. Before we ran that on our system at my nonprofit, I think we ended up getting almost 1,000 letters back. I mean, it was horrible because we had not cleansed our data before that. So when you want to talk about losing money, that's a great way to do it. I'm not here to share with you how to repeat those instances. Couple of other statistics: 5 to 8% response rate. And then 20, if you're only doing direct mail. If you also send an email to people, you can get as much as 28% response rate for your campaign. That should be a no-brainer. When you send out the direct mail, put your email list together, send the same message, make sure that you're getting out to them. 20 cents cost per $1 raised is the national average. So extrapolating that, it should be about a $22,000 raise. That factor is 3.9% for direct mail. Again, predominantly that's if you've got existing donors, not donor acquisition costs. So, and also if you're just starting out fundraising, make sure you're putting your ask on your newsletter and a variety of other places to make it easy for people. Quick touch point on major gift fundraising. I know we're getting short on time here. I don't know, Yenting, if we're permitted to go a little bit over. Major gift fundraising, super quick recipe. Use your CRM, find 500 donors that have given above your threshold. I can't tell you what your major gift fundraising threshold should be. Some people might say it's 1,000, it's 5,000, it's 10,000. I've got people that I know that hop on planes to go ahead and collect $100,000 of major gift fundraising that is out there. So you've got to figure that out based on looking at your data in your database. One other way to do it is find out what the threshold of the top 500 givers to your organization is and say, you know what, that's where I'm going to start. Whatever that entry point is, that's what I'm going to use as identifying a major gift. You then want to append some data, because after you've identified people that have given significantly, you want to find out capacity, right? So you want to know if they've given to other organizations. I've got some basic data that is down here from True Giver's system. That's the same system that does the change of address updates. They also provide you with some demographic information in terms of where they might fall from a net worth perspective and so forth. This can help shape whether you want to cultivate them as a major gift prospect in the future. Out of that 500, pick 100 of those to build relationships. Now, the great thing is if you could divvy that up amongst 10 different board members and say, would you reach out to these 10 people and start telling them about our cause and see what the reason is why they've given in the past? Once you understand that, you understand their attachment and why they give. Now, find a program inside of your organization that you want to start, you want to increase the capacity of, and give them an offer to say, if we have your gift of X amount, we will be able to do this with our program, right? And that's the spirit of major gift fundraising. If it were easy, my nonprofit would be doing it, right? We are not even at the capacity yet where we can quite be cultivating major gift fundraising. Just from a statistical perspective, we're about $1.5 million in terms of total revenue, about 20 employees. We've got one person that works in development, just so that you have that as a perspective. All right, last section, choosing a CRM. And I wanted to talk about this because after you've collected all of this data, you've got to put it in a place that is going to be able to work for you. You're not able to do those thank yous unless you actually have a good tool that's being able to message and communicate with them. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm just going to talk about nonprofit software. Again, I've seen a lot of startup organizations that are out there. The first thing that motivates them to get any kind of software, you're either looking for compliance. You've got to make sure that your receipts, your tax records are actually getting out. Otherwise, you can get scolded as a nonprofit, right? You might want to find ways to save time. Well, handwriting every thank you is a very difficult way to go about things. Electronic thank yous, streamlining the steps are going to save you time and more efficiently process your donations. Save the handwritten notes for your major donors. Better information. You need to know which campaigns are working for you so that you can repeat them, right? How long does it take you to run a report after you've got an event? How are they submitting the gifts? How long does it take you to put your gifts into the system? We've got a check scanning system that is used by some of the larger food banks that are in the nation right now that saves them almost a full-time employee in terms of updating the gifts inside of our software. And it also should allow you to fundraise more. Does it have the tools and features to go ahead and allow you to push out new campaigns easily and quickly and efficiently? So starting out, yes, I mean, website, Facebook page, make sure you have Office software, something that you can send individual emails to, write documents, Excel spreadsheets, whatever they might be. I mean, it's G Suite or Office 365 typically today. The next product that I see nonprofits that are starting out add is accounting software. Either get an accountant that has the product that you can use or add some yourself. And then comes the fundraising CRM. It's not until you get to that point where your spreadsheet is so full of donors that you need a better way to more efficiently handle them. Key features that I would look for: do not neglect reporting. You're putting all this data into a system. Make sure you know the kinds of reports you want to run so that you can do the segmentation and all of the smart activities that you need. We've got something called Smart Actions in Donor Perfect that actually triggers an email to the executive in your organization. So it tells them when there's something important that happens in the system. Make sure that your CRM has customer user-defined fields. I can actually put a field on our donor records that says cat lover or puppy dog lover. By the way, I did double check the chat. Looks like the puppy wins. And so if you have that in your database, that's how you can end up segmenting and communicating for their particular tendencies. It should be purpose-built for fundraising. I mean, I use Salesforce daily at Donor Perfect. It is our for-profit CRM database that we process orders through it. I would find it a little bit more challenging to use it from a fundraising perspective because I need to see things like gift history and so forth. I just think it's an easier navigation if it's purpose-built. So even the Blackbauds of the world and so forth are very purpose-built for fundraising. Make sure the product has client references and features good value. What are the number of features that you are going to be using for the price? It should have integrated online fundraising forms. Data flows in, nobody has to do imports or key that information in. I made a gift to my nonprofit. Remember, I lapsed. Well, it reminded me I needed to make my gift. And so I went online and instantly it showed up in my Donor Perfect database. And that's how I was able to send myself the video. Thank you. And an API to allow integration of multiple platforms. You're going to grow. We all hope you're going to grow. Your needs are going to increase. The CRM won't be the be all end all. You're going to have volunteer software products that are out there. You're going to have different peer-to-peer fundraising tools that you might use. Choose one that has an open integration platform so that you can connect them. And then why I chose Donor Perfect. One, I chose it because I spent so many years working with Razor's Edge. It is a purpose-built fundraising CRM. I find that it actually has the features of Blackbaud NXT, and we've had clients come up and say that I saved almost 4/5 of what I was paying before. It's got the open API, top-rated customer service. The company is still owned by the original founders and they were programmers. Warms my heart a little bit. And if any of you are interested, come join our conference June 7th and 8th. It will be virtual, but we would welcome you all. All right, I am over by a minute. So sorry, Yenting.
All right, that was amazing, Daryl. A lot of great and useful information. We do have maybe just 2 or 3 questions that we didn't get to, but I think if you're okay with it, maybe I can shoot an email to you with those questions and then we can just put it in the follow-up email. Would that be okay?
Yes, absolutely. I did try to touch on some of the points that were asked before the webinar, but by all means, I'd be happy to respond to those and include them as a follow-up.
Awesome, thank you. I'll be sure to send that to you. And when I send the follow-up email, the recording of this webinar will be included, as well as the answers to some of the questions that we may have missed. Just want to let everyone go, but before I do, again, Daryl, amazing, really appreciate your time. A lot of useful information. I think we took away a lot around donors. Our next session will be not next Thursday, but the Thursday after on March 17th. We will be hearing directly from 3 donors themselves. I feel like there's going to be a lot of overlaps, a lot of common themes. So please join us to hear from them directly and just have another perspective. You do not need to register again for that webinar. You will get a reminder email maybe a week or a couple of days before the next one, and you'll have that link. But the registration is still open if you'd like to invite others. Okay, go ahead and let you go. If you are in Charlotte, I hope you find some time today to enjoy the beautiful weather, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.